I got to a fourth platoon, first force recon, and the platoon sergeant was a guy that had been one of my students at sniper school. And so he knew I was coming. They had me on the, list of people that were coming from BRC. He saw my name, knew who I was, and he's like, "Oh, I know this guy." And he knew that he knew that he wanted me to do sniper stuff in his platoon. So the way that Force Recon was organized back then, the platoon, they call it a DAS, or Direct Action Special Reconnaissance. So you've got one half of the platoon, or more than half, but one block of the platoon is focused on doing direct action, so the CQB stuff. Now, everybody goes to the CQB training and all that, but those are the guys who are, task organized to do that. And then you've got special reconnaissance, which will have a free fall team and a dive team, right? So those are the guys that are going to do all the reconnaissance stuff, all the like snooping and pooping, taking pictures, being on target before the direct actions guys get there, shooting sniper, precision fires in support of that, doing the, controlling air and artillery, all that kind of stuff happens with the SR guys, right? So he knew, my background being a sniper, and having already been to airborne school, they didn't have to like spend a quota on that. So I go straight to free fall school. So, and that was like, back then that was kind of a big deal, because like there was a lot of guys who'd been at Force Recon for 3-4 years and hadn't got a chance to go to free fall school yet. So some of the guys were pissed because they're like, "Who's this new dickhead just shows up and gets a free fall school right off the bat?" Like that type of thing. But that's what ended up happening. So I got into the military free fall stuff pretty big, right away. It's like, go to free fall school, which is an Army school back then. Marine Corps has its own now. We do our own free fall thing, but yeah. Or
not Yuma, right outside that area.
Not Yuma. That's where it's shit. I can't remember now, but it's because the Marine Corps has different parachute systems than the Army does now. We have they have a multi-mission parachute system. It requires like different training. Mm-hmm. So it used to be though that you go to military free fall, the Army one, then you graduate that, and then you have to do another month-long course to transition to this multi-mission parachute system. So that's a lot of jumping. And then you get in a team, and you do jump packages that are just for your team or whatever. So in short order, like within months, I had like 100 jumps, 100 free or ish, which is a lot for
anyone. That's a lot for anyone, let alone one dude within a couple months. That's crazy.
Yeah. So
when you come out of school, for people that don't know, you come out of that school certified, right? Was it like a Class C, like skydiving license
you mean
or something
like
that?
Yep. You get you can go. You come out of there with you have to do the paperwork and pay the shit or whatever. But yeah, you have done all the jumps required to get a parachute license. So just like dive school, you leave there with a PADI license. Yeah. Same thing. You leave free fall school with a little thing. And and a lot of guys get into it. Like they'll buy a rig and start jumping on the weekends and all that kind of stuff. I never did until I never got into it as a hobby, probably just because I didn't have the I was married at the time and I didn't have money. But I thought I wanted to get into it a few years ago, so I bought like a amazing rig and all that kind of stuff, and then within like a year I sold it to one of my buddies. So
oh really?
Yeah, I thought I needed a hobby, but I'm like, I got a kid, I can't be fucking
jumping out,
flinging myself out of airplanes and shit.
I got a buddy who does it, and he loves it, man. He's the same. Cool. He got his license as a recon guy, and he bought his own rig. I think he paid like $1,500 or whatever for some parachute.
Oh, he got one cheap then.
Well, I think he knew a guy, so he got a good deal on a good one. And he's like, dude, once you have the parachute, he's like, I just pay for lift tickets. He goes, I show up and it's $20 to go, or $25 to go jump out of a plane. Whereas, you know, for the weekend jumper, you got to pay for the instructor that's coming up with you. You got to pay for
it's not bad once you have your own rig. It's not bad, but I like when I think about the MFF, the free fall stuff. It's the most like, I don't know how you like describe it, like the most kind of like stereotypically cool guy like thing to do, right? So, and then you get used to it or whatever, but it was not lost on me. Like the first time, at free fall school, you start towards the end, you start doing these, like they call them wall locker jumps, where it's like everything in your wall locker, right? But full combat equipment on O2, right? Because you're going to be up at altitude, jumping with a bunch of other dudes at night. You know what I mean? And you're like, the ramp opens, and I'm like, oh, this is the first time I felt like I'm like, oh, I'm really doing like some like cool guy shit. You know what I mean? Like up until that point, all the cool guy shit I was doing was mostly just suffering. It's like carry 100-pound pack up the side of that mountain. Then when you get there, lay in the dirt and look at stuff with binos for 3 days, and then a helicopter is going to pick you up. You know what I mean? Like, this not at no point does that feel glamorous. You know, it just
it sounds cool when you're telling the story, but in the moment it sucks,
right? But the jumping, I'm like, this is cool. And of course, the military can suck the fun out of everything. But what they can't suck out of jumping is, I don't care who you are, you're a little bit freaked out every time. Most dudes will be that, but that's why you like it. That's why it's cool. Like, you're like, there's a bunch of different ways this could very easily go wrong and I die. You know, you're like, it doesn't take much. You know, you're like, some pin gets stuck somewhere, or I didn't check this shit, or something gets wrapped around my foot, or I spaz out and I forget. Because the other interesting thing about all this shit is you learn these emergency procedures, and it's the military, so it's like safety, 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 right? So every time you jump, you do this jump brief, and you go over all the procedures. If this happens, then that. You know, this kind of like, flow chart of catastrophes, right? Like, pull ripcord, this doesn't happen, then do this. You do this, and that doesn't happen, then do this, right? All great when you're standing there, but when I've had 3 parachute malfunctions that resulted in a cutaway with a reserve ride or whatever.
Oh my God, that's got to be sketchy.
Well, it's not exactly like when you're just standing there, like, but you do think you're like, what are you supposed to do if you're like falling towards the ground and you're like, okay, this, then that, fuck, I hope this is the right, what order does this go in? Pull this, it's, you know what I mean? So especially after you have one of those, then you go jump again. You're like, you've experienced it going south on you, and you're like, but that part of that is like fucking cool. You know, you're like, it's I don't know.
The first time you had a malfunction and you had to do a cutaway, when you got to the ground, were you like, Jesus Christ?
I got in trouble. They were mad at me. So it was during the transition course for that multi-mission parachute system. It has this thing, I fucking forget some of the nomenclature, but it has a drogue parachute. So, and there's different ways you can set the drogue, but the way we were doing it in this particular thing, it's like, I think we're jumping out and then you set the drogue, like it's a hand deployed pilot chute, right? So you set the drogue, and this is the first time I'd ever like flown under a drogue, and they told us, they're like, hey, it's going to feel weird. You might kind of buff it like this a little bit, but they said you should be able to turn and like see the drogue parachute or like touch it, you should be able to verify that it's there, and it might like feel weird, Well, I get out, I set the drogue, and I'm flying really weird. Like my head is like down at an angle, and it's like freaking me out. And I turn and I can't see the thing and I can't touch it, but I also forgot that I'm a stubby little fucker. Like I have short little arms and a little stubby torso. So it was just that I was freaking myself out. Like I was flying weird. It felt weird. I couldn't see the thing. So I didn't think the drogue was there, or I just didn't know what was going on. And then it has this thing called the golf ball, which is how you release the drogue. You pull on this golf ball thing and it releases the drogue and it pulls your parachute out. Well, they tell you if you pull on that golf ball and it doesn't work, you're supposed to like pin your arm to your side and then really wrench on it. And then if that doesn't work, you go through your cutaway procedures. Well, I tried like one time and it wouldn't go easily. And I immediately just kind of spazzed out. I'm like, well, I knew that fucking drogue wasn't there. I knew this was fucked up. And now in my mind, I'm like getting to where I need to like make a decision. So I kind of was like, yeah, this shit isn't working. And I deployed my reserve, right? So fine, I get on the ground and they come like screaming over in the truck because they see what the fuck's going on. They're like, and then they're like, the ground crew's like talking to me and I'm telling them my story and they're like looking at my parachute system that's on the ground. They're like, now you just spazzed out, dude. You owe us beer. You owe us a case of beer. So if you activate your reserve, you owe whoever packed it like a case of beer or whatever. They're like, you're just a dumbass. Like you spazzed out, dude. You owe beer. I'm like, okay.
Man, no way. I'd say, hey, take whatever precautions you got to do when you're at 10,000 feet hurtling towards the ground.
Yeah, for sure.
Man, that's crazy. See, you were so on those same lines of stuff you did in the military that you do on the outside. Do you ever do precision marksmanship at all anymore? Do you shoot long range or anything?